Hi everybody, it's a recap on what I was doing yesterday, and then I'm going to go on with a little more discharge, bleaching and printing on fabric. So this is the finished piece of fabric that I showed you with the discharge leaves, the skeleton leaves, and then overprinting again to introduce this orange colour. That's the finished piece of textile. I'll put that aside now and go on with printing more stuff to use in my jacket project. Okay, before I go on with showing you these other prints I've done, I wanted to just quickly show you this skirt. In 2001, I backpacked around India and Nepal for about 3 months, and this gorgeous skirt I bought in New Delhi. This is a discharge print done by some very masterful Indian practitioners. It is absolutely gorgeous, which just shows you the great level of sophistication you can potentially achieve with this discharge technique. It's really fabulous, that skirt. I just wish I hadn't expanded so much that I can no longer get into it. So I've put it aside to hopefully do some upcycling of it into another garment one day when I'm working on the right project. So there you go, really sophisticated discharge printing. Okay, so yesterday I went on with some more printing. I tore some strips off the red cotton sheet that I showed you and did a strip of stenciling on this piece of fabric. So I've printed that with some really nice dark ochre gold colour. Now the stencils I used are really old ones of mine. These are maybe 7 or 8 years old. These are cut from heavy plastic, and I've used them a great deal over the years. I really like these geometric prints. And I went back to using my sponge roller for printing on these, sponging the colour into the fabric. And that is a strip of textile that I can incorporate into the project. So that's been put aside in my heap of altered textiles that I may introduce into the jacket. Just a quick recap on the stencil and stamp technique that I showed yesterday. Okay, so I love leaves. I often use leafy type stencils. I actually created the stencil about 3 or 4 months ago for another project that I videoed, Catherine's bushfire themed dress, and I made a really huge stencil of a tree, tree branches, trunks, and I was printing that on the lovely orange gold fabrics that she supplied me and trying to capture the idea of bush in flames, in fire. So this leaf stencil was cut 3 or 4 months ago. Now I'm quite happy to cut stencils from heavy paper like this and throw them away after a few uses, because I don't like going on using the same stencils forever and ever, except perhaps these ones which I just showed you, which have been going for nearly a decade. But I like to have also a range of disposable ones so that I don't get caught up always using the same imagery. So these temporary stencils suit me quite well to be used just for a short period of time and then disposed of. Now you may have noticed yesterday when I was printing this, I was quite vigorously scrubbing the paint into it, and of course I started damaging and ripping apart the veins in that stencil. Now I think that stencil, I'm going to call that had it. It's really not got much more, if any, use left in it. So consequently, because I have used this stencil quite a lot and I really like using it, I decided that I would make a more permanent stencil out of plastic film because I'm going to go on using it for the foreseeable future. This is the original diagram I did for when I cut this initial stencil here. So I made this diagram and traced it out onto this cardboard and cut it out. But now I'm going to make a more permanent stencil from that out of the plastic film. And I did mention the other day that I had masses and masses of this plastic film, hundreds, literally hundreds of sheets of this that I'd collected about 18 years ago when I used to be a cleaner, and I worked in the offices of the Port Stephens Council down in Raymond Terrace, and they would throw out tens, dozens of these plastic binders every week, and I got into the habit of ripping the covers off because I used to make stencils back then, and I'm still using up that stencil film. So here we go. So I've just literally placed the film over there, and then I used a Sharpie pen to mark out the cells that I was going to cut out of there, and that is the cutout stencil. To make the reverse stamp, the negative stamp, I literally printed the stencil on this material. Yesterday I couldn't recall what it was, the name of it. I referred to it as rubber, but it's actually a kind of neoprene, and that's a nice thick one, about 1 centimetre thick. You can get it often in rolls 6mm thick that are used for yoga mats, and I use cut up yoga mat stuff. Here's one to make other kind of boards that I use to make marks on fabric, but we'll talk about that another time. But this stuff is the thinner neoprene, the 6mm thick stuff. But this one, the 1 centimetre thick, 10 mils, is great for making stamps out of. So I literally printed the stencil on top of the neoprene, and I'm looking for my little tool here. I just used a carving tool, a tool that would normally be used with, cutting stamps from other materials, and such lightweight stuff. Then I just cut the cells out of that, meaning that I have a positive stencil and a negative stamp. And as you can see in that textile, the orange and black textile, they work really well together. So that's a little bit more detailed information on how those stencils and stamps were cut. Now, right now I'm going to go on with a little more demonstrating using discharge. So I've got a piece of my red sheeting again. This is my tray for the bleach, and I have recently swapped over to using this thick clinging gel type bleach rather than the liquid bleach that I started out using, because obviously the gel doesn't soak and run into the fabric as much. It tends to give a better print. So I'm going to put a bit in the tray. Charge up my roller. Here we go. And I'm pretty much going to do the same type of printing as I did on the black fabric, but I'll try not to delete the video this time. So here we go. Just pressing the roller on there through the cells to get the imprint of that leaf. And you can see that this light cotton is pretty quickly responding by leaching out colour. It looks dark at the moment, but it'll go light very soon. woohoo, and there's a big splashy streak I did across there because I'm not really concentrating adequately on what I'm doing here. Okay, but we can incorporate that into here by making that into a stem, of course, of the leaf. So that was a great demonstration of what not to do, which is, you know, waving one's roller over the fabric, lest you end up with unplanned for streaks. Now, print number 1 is starting to leach out quite nicely, turning lovely shades of pink. This is exactly what I did on the black fabric, except I was explaining I did this other thing of flipping the stencil over. Now see how I've got some residue of bleach on that face side? In some places I turned the stencil over and pressed it down like this, and you get a much paler impression because there's not that much bleach on that stencil, so it'll just come out really pale, light image. Okay, so I'm now going to go over to doing some impressions with the stamp. When I can find it in my pile of stuff. Heavens. I can't find it already. Geez, I'm getting good. Okay, that one's no good. There she is. Okay, trying not to repeat my motion of waving the dripping roller over the fabric. I'll just do it up here. Okay, and this time we're going to get that lovely skeletal shape come out instead. Pressing it down. I believe I could already top up that tray a bit. Used up a fair bit of that liquid gel already. Okay, now this time I'm going to do a part stencil. Yep, just proving I work. Randomly selecting here. There we go. There. And another one of these. There we go. I think that's quite sufficient stamps for my liking. I'm going to do another print with the stencil. go. Nice. The places where I've pressed the bleach more heavily into the fabric are coming out whiter, and the places where there's less pale pink, getting some really nice colour variations in here. Very pleasing. Alright, that's going to be my last print there, and I'm just going to set those aside and do one more print, and I'm going to leave this aside for the moment, and I'll show you later on the finished result. I'm going to leave that to bleach out for a few more minutes yet. Now here's another thing we're going to play around with, a bit more the red cotton. Okay, I'm looking for a specific stencil. And if you could see the great pile of stuff alongside here, you'd understand why I can't find things very easily in the studio. Okay, so I'm just going to do a really basic circle, because I'm going to come back with that one and print something in the space that's going to bleach out of there. Okay, I'm just going to make this my last circle, and then I'm going to do one last print for you, and we'll be finished in the next couple of minutes. That one. Okay, so the last print I'm going to do is quickly duck back to this, what I call texture board. Now, I'm a really sloppy worker. I've already got spots of bleach that have landed off that roller that I keep flourishing around in the way I told you a while ago not to do. There we go. So I placed that texture board with the neoprene yoga mat triangles on it underneath the textile. And I'm charging up my roller again, and I'm going to roll over the top to pick up those shapes. In the last garment that I finished, the Zambezi jacket commission, there is a section of this on the peplum, on the lower part of the jacket, a stencil of this discharge triangle pattern on the denim, and it works really well. I also really like using these triangles to do reverse applique with, and perhaps I'll demonstrate some reverse applique eventually with these triangles. We'll see how it goes. There we go. So they're starting to leach out. And this textile, I will show you in a while how we're going to overprint these circles. But that's it for this point in time.